Hi everybody, my name's Rob Scott from UC Today, and in this session I'm joined by Fuze, who will be talking to us about the future of work. I'm joined by three experts from the Fuze team. How about we get started with a round of introductions? So first of all, Chris, welcome.
Hey Rob, nice to be here. So I'm the CIO for Fuze, and if you're not familiar with Fuze, we're a leader in the unified communication as a service vertical. We've been in the business for quite some time, and our niche or our specialty, we like to say, are complex global implementations of UCaaS and dealing with those types of customers.
Great, thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining us, Lisa.
Hey Rob, my name is Lisa Campopiano, and I'm joining you outside of Boston in our home during this crisis. I oversee our customer success and customer sales at Fuze. So my teams are dedicated and focused to our existing customer base. We're there to help them with anything from renewals and additional purchases to taking on additional escalations and really just making sure that we're there to help our customers be as successful as possible with their Fuze solution.
Great, thanks Lisa, and welcome. And finally, Dean.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I'm Dean Holmes. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at Fuze. My team works on enabling the sales team. We work directly with product when they're releasing new features and functionality. We do deal with competitive intelligence, all the things you kind of expect from a product marketing team. I've been in the unified communications industry before it was even called unified communications for 23 plus years. Everything from selling to implementing solutions, contact centers, PBXs, video conferencing, et cetera, you name it. So I've been around the industry for a long time and really been fascinated by the changes that we've seen. Great
stuff. So thanks very much for joining me. I'm really excited about this session. So I love the future work. It's just one of my topics I really do enjoy. So it's great to have you all here, especially in my virtual meeting space today. It's kind of apt, isn't it, given the topic. So as we record this session, the COVID-19 pandemic sweeps the globe, stopping normal life for most of us. So a question that is on every business leader's mind right now is when will it return to normal? And of course, most importantly, what does normal look like? So Chris, I think a great place to kick off is kind of just recapping on the last decade and what has the workplace kind of been through, and most importantly, what does it look like today?
Yeah, I mean, what we've been saying for some time now is the concept of work is really no longer about a place where you go. It's about being as productive as possible from wherever you are, anywhere you are, with any device that you have at your disposal. Also, younger workers entering the workspace over the last several years, they're demanding easier to use, seamless digital solutions to enhance their communications and their productivity. Because frankly, they have these tools at their disposal outside the office. So when they come into the office, they expect that same level of productivity, that ease of use, that seamlessness that they get outside the office. And even before the COVID-19 crisis has hit, more and more companies have been incorporating flexible jobs, remote work into their businesses as a response to this increasing distributed workforce. So more and more distributed workforce, demand for ease of use, demand for seamlessness about the digital solutions that the workforce is using are all trends that we've seen coming and increasingly happening over the last several years. So it's no wonder that remote or flexible work has been on the rise again, even before the pandemic hit. Something else, we commissioned a recent study that basically echoed the fact that 83% of the workforce that was surveyed felt like they didn't need to be in an office space to be productive. And on top of that, 60% of app generation folks, or half the millennials that were interviewed or part of this study, felt that their smartphones or their laptops were really the only essential tools that they needed to be productive and get their work done So those are all trends that, as a business, we're very keen to be aware of, and we're trying to make sure that we're serving as we deliver our solution.
Great, thanks. Lisa, do you have an opinion on that at all?
I would echo, but to add on to what Chris was saying, we've already seen this in a lot of corporate environments, that this is where they're trying to go. What I don't think anybody ever planned for was something that would force the entire world to get there. And it's been interesting to Chris's point, is a lot of organizations want to be able to be more sort of future thinking, but didn't always know how successfully they could get to the next level. Could they be as productive with a distributed work environment and so forth? And I mean, as we talk further, this has forced the hand for many organizations to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean, what about yourself? Digital transformation seems to have almost happened overnight, hasn't it? What do you see?
Yeah, it really has. It is fascinating to see how much this industry has changed, right? For a very long time, there was a lot of iterations and kind of communication, but all of it was, oh, my phone on my desktop or the conference room with the big video. That was about it, right? And very quickly we migrated to more of the software type model, and now I can use my computer, and then obviously, today I can do everything that I need to do from my phone. I can message people, go right to a phone call, go right to a video call. And it's kind of fascinating and amazing to me to think that 10 years ago it was predominantly my phone was on my desk, and that's how I communicated with people, and maybe I had the occasional video conference, and now for us, with Fuze, I don't know the last time I wasn't on video in a call, even if it's a one-to-one call or it's an entire team that's going on. It's just second nature to us. And as Chris was mentioning, obviously the younger generation, it's almost, they don't even understand when you don't use video in many cases. So it is fascinating to see the changes. It's also interesting to see how organizations are pulling in the older generations, right? I mean, we're in a situation where we have 5 generations at work, so you kind of have to deal with how do you balance the differences in kind of how people work from a generational standpoint. And I think that's where you see the companies that are successful are so, when they're so focused on the user, right, and how they utilize the application or the platform or the tools, then that really comes through, because it makes it easier for anybody to adopt, regardless of sort of what their preferences or maybe that generational gap that you might see.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, isn't it? And leads us nicely on to the next question I was going to kind of put to Lisa first of all. But with the rapid adoption of remote working, we've seen all kinds of challenges in the workforce, and you mentioned generations there. But Lisa, what kinds of challenges are you seeing right now with remote working?
So first off, I think nobody would argue that there was no company that had ever written a business continuity plan in the event the entire world had to figure out how to work remotely. I don't think that was ever thought of, right? So what one thing to highlight is that a lot of our customers had a very small window of opportunity to try to figure out how to get their employees who were not maybe previously set up to work from home because it wasn't their sort of the most productive way to do their job, let's say. And these customers were focused on, how do I do something quickly, fast, easy, to get the most productivity we can, keep business flowing. And I think it's been truly a challenge for a lot of organizations who didn't maybe already sort of progress into utilizing things like soft phone and video meetings and chat features and such. And it really forced them to start to think really quickly on what is the next step. So what we've been working through with our customers is those who took more of a temporary measure. It wasn't maybe a full-on production sort of model of what we would typically roll out with a customer on a full UCaaS solution. What we find is that we are spending more time talking through, okay, what happens next? How do we enable your users, as an example, on the proper use of our mobile solution or soft phones or what have you? We've done a ton of enablement calls. We've been training the trainer, so to speak, so that our customers, and from an administrative perspective, can be very successful getting out into their users, in front of the users, and helping them to use something that maybe was new to them because they didn't previously need to use a laptop for softphone. They were used to, like Dean said, they're used to doing, the old-fashioned pick up your handset type of thing. So those challenges are real, and we work through that. We have been on the phone. My teams are always, whether it's reacting or proactively, on the phones all day long, taking calls, setting up meetings, and working through to make sure that they can be the most successful they can be during this time.
Great stuff. And Dean, what do you see from your perspective? Any particular challenges stand out for you?
Yeah, it is interesting. As Lisa mentioned, this clearly has accelerated the time frame that I think a lot of organizations were thinking about. I mean, when you look at this market for migrating, it's a very large market with a very little penetration in it right now, and that's clearly going to change very quickly as we get to this level of companies are no longer thinking, oh, my next platform is going to be in the cloud. It's now, oh, what do I need to do to get my people enabled? I need to go to the cloud right now. So I think that you are seeing that accelerated time frame, and it is, as Lisa mentioned, it's probably forced some hands and forced some uncomfortable situations. But the good news is that I think that companies are seeing that they can do it. I think that's the key, right? That was always probably maybe the last hurdle for a lot of organizations is it okay for me to say that people can work from home? Can people be productive? Can we do this? This has answered that question very, very succinctly and very quickly. So now it's what is the best way to migrate, and that's where I think for us as an organization, we look at our cloud migration strategy as a big point of what we look at. It used to be the old days that an IT person would just drop off the phone at your desk and here you go, good luck, and here's a little card that shows you how to do all these things. And now it's a much bigger transition. You're talking about transitioning 3 or 4 different types of modality of communication into, say, a single application that is accessible on your desktop, your browser, your mobile app, and regardless of how user friendly they are, that's not always an easy transition. So an organization like ours, we don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, here's some software, go have fun. We are talking about enterprise organizations with tens of thousands of users. That's an adoption methodology that you have to go back to some of the tried and true of the older traditional type of models. And I think that people are recognizing that even though this is a cloud-based solution, even though this is kind of software forward, that requirements of sort of migrating as you would in more of a traditional large project is a big part of it. So we're sort of coming at that from the back end with what's going on right now, right? Some people had to kind of do the migration, and now we're doing all the things that we would traditionally do in an implementation, sort of on the back end as we're bringing people up into this new world.
That's a really interesting point you just made there. And Chris, what do you see from your perspective? Because Fuze are a large organization themselves. So, I mean, you must have had to do that yourselves quite quickly and then offer those services to your customers as well. So interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, internally, from a Fuze perspective, I feel quite fortunate and grateful that remote work is part of our DNA, and we were very quickly able to efficiently move to 100% remote workforce, just because of our familiarity with the Fuze platform itself in terms of a communication and collaboration solution, but then just our cloud first IT strategy, basically enabling Fusers, who we call our employees, to be productive as soon as they're onboarded into the business. So from that perspective, we didn't struggle too much, thankfully. But I will add, as Lisa and Dean had some great points in terms of the challenges that I think others are facing. Maybe a couple that I would add would be security. There's some new challenges from a security perspective that I think CIOs and IT leaders have had to wrestle with. Those that have got ahead of the curve on identity management, as an example, asset management, endpoint security, making sure that they have well-defined incident management processes and procedures for issues that come up. And then just making sure from an IT support perspective, you have adequate resources and tools that are necessary for supporting a remote workforce, 100% remote workforce. I think those are probably all things that, as Lisa suggested, probably weren't well thought out for 100% remote workforce, but may have been thought through for a essential workforce that you might consider for a regional outage of some sort. And then I guess my last point would be in terms of the challenges is from a cultural and people perspective. I think managers are probably struggling a bit. Perhaps some of the vintage generations more so than others with focusing on performance and productivity as opposed to focusing on their folks' attendance inside offices and facilities to measure employee value. So those are all things that I think have come into play here as COVID-19 has played out.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And a question for Dean then. And with the current pandemic in mind, is the future of work happening right now, do you think? Are we seeing overnight adoption of tomorrow's technology?
Yeah, I think so. It really is. It has jump started that change in many ways, right? Obviously, as we've talked about, the fact that all of a sudden everybody has to figure out how to work from home, and that obviously brings lots of challenges. We've hit a lot on the technology side of it, and having the right tool makes that an easier solution. So obviously, as we've mentioned, organizations are going to be trying to figure that out, looking at retooling or changing what they're doing that way. But I think you're going to see a massive shift in the people side, and Chris kind of nailed that there at the end. We always talk a lot about technology enablement, but just as important is the people enablement, and that goes to every level, as Chris talked about. That's management that has the buy-in and says, hey, this is something that we can do, and this is what we need to do, to enabling people with all of the tools that they need to be able to work remotely and function in that environment. So I think you are seeing that, and we're going to see I think a shift in just workplace dynamics in general. This thing could be with us for a little while, so we could be seeing a situation where we look at A and B shifts, where A shifts are coming into the office on Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesday the office is cleaned, and the B shift comes in on Thursdays and Fridays, and everyone works from home when they're not in the office. So your tools are going to have to be able to allow you to, if we go to that point where we start going back in, I'm also going to have to be able to do that, replicate that right back away to home if I need to. So I think that we are seeing a pretty dynamic shift in the future of work, because I think we can take the future out of it and just say this is how we're working for right now, because we are in the midst of this, and having the right tools is what it's allowing people to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, would you like to follow up on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually as recent as this morning, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. I think it was the IDC's CEO that said, as a result of COVID-19, he believes there'll be a premium on agility and cloud and I forget what he exactly said, but focusing on finding and implementing solutions that give enterprises the highest degree of agility possible. So I think there'll be a premium on simple solutions again for those younger generations. The tools that they're used to using outside the office, making sure that those are there inside. Making sure the tools that they're using from a communication and collaboration perspective work well with other tools that are used throughout the business, and just increasingly having a focus on allowing the organization to move rapidly as circumstances change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the cloud does that, doesn't it? And
It does.
You wouldn't normally associate enterprise organizations with agility, but it can be done, right? So with these technologies and services available now, it can be done. Lisa, what do you think? Customers, you're heavily involved in customer success, so I'd be interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I'm happy to share a few things. Well, future of work, there's so many changes that I think that we will see. First off, I'm going to focus more on the positives. I think there's plenty of potential negatives, but to think of if I can, think about where I think the good things that are going to come out of this would be. I think we're going to see different industries that previously felt as though they couldn't do a distributed work environment are going to be really creatively leveraging different tools, a different workplace, a different mindset that may allow them to do their to offer their business for a maybe even at a different cost. In other words, maybe lower overhead because they don't need as much brick and mortar, things like that. I think you're going to see new personas that instead of having FaceTime, you will be able to get faster service because folks will be leveraging a remote video, whether it's telemedicine or any type of sort of practice that you always thought was always an in-person sort of service. They will offer more remotely now. I think that you'll start to see as a competitive advantage, some organizations will now be very proud of their business continuity / work from home offering, so that as a competitive advantage, they could attract top talent. I think there's many things that will come as an outcome of the situation, and the future of work will absolutely not go back. And while there may be a lot of really unfortunate situations that do occur for those that simply are not able to do their jobs because they can't possibly do this remotely, regardless of that, I do still believe there will be a lot of very interesting, creative success stories that arise as a result of what we're going through right now.
Great stuff. Thank you. And, just as a kind of final question for you all, I'd like to just kind of get the crystal ball out for a moment and kind of look into the future. But Chris, start with you. In terms of what do you think the future of work will look like, kind of 6 months, 12 months from now? Lisa's touched on a few there, but do you think from a CIO's perspective, certainly it's going to be different? You're going to have to rewrite these business continuity plans. What's the future work going to look like?
Yeah, again, going back to the idea that agility will be the premium, right? Making sure whatever solution that you seek out to either replace a legacy solution or to enhance a solution, that you're thinking about agility, you're thinking about what solution will adapt to any changing circumstance that might exist either internally or externally in your business. So openness, adaptability. From a cultural perspective, I think shift towards a non-hierarchical culture is definitely works with this younger generation, and focusing on, again, performance and productivity, and not a focus on being in the office and being present as a measure of employee value.
Well, that's a very interesting point, isn't it? In terms of employee value. Dean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that I kind of hinted a little bit about it, that there's probably going to be some shifts in sort of the general way that we do business. But I think one of the things that we don't often, or we sort of talk about, but we don't think about as much because we're trying to think about how do we get through this and how do we do business, is we're all in this together. We're all in the same boat. The customers we're serving, their customers that they're serving, they're all serving. People are all having to be in a situation where, we're not getting to work from home because of this. This is forcing us to be in this situation where we're all working from home. And I think that changes a little bit of just the general philosophy of how we communicate, because we all understand a little bit more about each other now than I think we maybe did before. Because when we're communicating with somebody who is my support staff or somebody who's whatever, I know that they're probably at home. And if I'm on video, I've probably seen that. So I think you're going to see, a little more kind of personal level of engagement when you're talking about B2B or B2C, whatever type of company you are, because there is a level of personal aspect to this that you're going to see. So even when we go back to going to the office and bouncing between office and home I think there's going to be hopefully a little bit more humanity in some of the aspects of the future of work.
Indeed, we hope so. Lisa, would you like to add anything on there at all?
I do think we covered a lot. I think I'll build off of Dean's comment to say, I think the human aspect of this whole situation where you cannot physically be near and some of your family and your friends and your coworkers, it has given, I think, a lot of us a different level of appreciation for each other, whether you're an employer and your employees or your employees of your employer. It really is, there's a change and there's more of a connection. Whether we, again, intentionally try to make it or not, I just think there's a different level of appreciation that's happening right now for when we do speak with each other and what it means. From a sales leader perspective, I think that the crystal ball tells me that there will be many, many more organizations that will give up the traditional workspace and the cost associated with it to allow their folks to work from home, whether full-time or in a staggered environment, because it can be done. The traditional inside sales teams are as equally productive being able to utilize a tool like what we offer to stay in touch with each other, their customers. I think that is one of the biggest changes, and that's going to positively impact a lot of corporations.
Thank you. It's been great speaking to you all today. So lots to reflect on indeed. I believe there's lots of information on COVID-19 and remote working technology on your website at fuze.com. You can even get a demo if you're looking to trial the technology. But Chris, Lisa, and Dean, I really appreciate you talking to me today and taking time out. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, thanks. And don't forget, if you've enjoyed today's session, we'd really appreciate a like or a share. So see you again soon.